Military Broadcast Radio, the station that's giving veterans a voice.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
This entire military is one cohesive, dedicated force. And the threats to our nations, they don't sleep. They're watching our every move. Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They may be watching this right now. Our military should not be mistaken for a cable news gabfest show. We don't care what you look like. We don't care who you voted for, who you worship, what you worship, who you love. It doesn't matter if your dad left you millions when he died or if you knew who your father was. We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We've seen war. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters.
Military Broadcast Radio, the station that's giving veterans a voice.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Join Terry with Tracer Rounds every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern to hear interviews with veteran artists, veteran business owners, and businesses that support veterans. Catch us on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and MB Radio. If you miss a show, you can listen again on Wreaths Across America Radio every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Tune in to see if you are on target. MBR, giving veterans a voice.
And welcome back to the Tracer Rounds podcast. And I'm Terry, your host. And with me tonight is Robert Elliott, who is a Marine. And he's also the executive or the founder or executive director, I guess, too, of the Veterans Farm of North Carolina. Welcome, Robert.
Thanks for having me. And I appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, I'm so excited to hear more about your service and then about the farm. So knowing you're a Marine, can you tell us a little bit about your service, maybe when you joined and why you joined, and maybe some highlights of your time in service?
Sure. So I was in from 1997 to 2002, and I was in the air wing working with C-130s. And a DoD contractor in the same units with the same Marines for 10 years afterwards. But basically, I served in California, Okinawa, and then finished out in North Carolina, where I'm originally from, primarily working with C-130 aircraft and rebuilding engines and fixing that kind of stuff and going wherever they needed to go and taking care of those birds. And, my service was, I got to go a lot of places in 5 years as active duty, but what really started right out the gate was having to deal with a suicide that happened right in front of me. And that kind of set the stage for a lot of other things as I went along through life, with what I did and built with this organization and what its ultimate purpose is. So having to have a Marine that committed suicide right in front of me, it was pretty eye-opening, and having to kind of go along and see some more of that as I went through active duty was really eye-opening to me. And since getting out and through the contract years, watching other Marines get out, trying to battle it out in the civilian world. 6 of the Marines I served with have since committed suicide as well. So, it's tragic, and everything that I do and everything that I've built is kind of focused around that. But we can get more into my story and all that as we go, if you'd like.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is a staggering number of people, of soldiers or Marines to have, chosen that as their option. It's really hard, like you say, for the transition from active military service, especially to a civilian job, because you just don't seem to find the same level of responsibility that you once had as a service member. You were in charge of multi-million-dollar equipment. You did things, in the name of your government, and then you come home and they're like, okay, well, you can pick up trash around this building and you can work as a janitor, and you're like, wait, what? And it's just not fulfilling, and you lose your sense of community. And so, like you say, you really have to have something that makes that transition possible to from military service to civilian work service.
Right. And yeah, 100%. And I get asked to speak a lot to civilian audiences that are not familiar with military life, the veteran world, and all that kind of stuff that we go through. And I always relay it back to all of them in the sense of to give them kind of an idea of what it's like. Picture yourself going on a trip overseas, and you get on the airplane and it's exciting and you're getting to go somewhere, and then all of a sudden something fails with the aircraft and you wind up crashing on a deserted island. Picture the TV series Lost, right?
Right.
And for 4 years minimum, you're stuck on that deserted island. Nobody can find you, and the success of your survival 100% depends on you for others, and others dependent on you.
Right.
Is basically there are days in the military as I relate it to folks. And then all of a sudden one day, you've been battling it out on this island and building shelters and finding water and growing food and hunting, gathering, whatever you got to do to stay alive. And one day, helicopter shows up on the island, picks you all up, and dumps you back into the civilian world, and it's welcome home party, and you're not going to function the same anymore, right?
Right.
It's different because when you come out, we always paint this picture with the DD-214 that it's going to be roses and gardens and everything's going to be wonderful, and I'm going to go get this killer job and I'm going to have a house and everything's going to be awesome. I don't have to get yelled at anymore and all that kind of stuff, And when we get out, or at least when I got out, I was not prepared for the immediate cut of talking to everybody I'd been with for the last 15 years, both active and contracting,
Yeah.
They all disappear overnight. And now you're out there to battle it out for yourself, and you ain't quite right, is the way I always like to put it. You ain't quite right, and you don't fit in with the civilian world anymore. You're used to some of the most masculine dudes and some of the most hard people on the planet, and now you're back home and you've got a dark sense of humor, and they don't laugh at some of the jokes that we tell. In fact, you get written up for that in the civilian world. So
right.
It can be a massive struggle, and we see that in suicide statistics among transitioners in the first year after getting out of the military. That's the largest population that we see, demographically speaking, that are committing suicide are the ones that are getting out and trying to knuckle it out and can't quite figure it out, and things are not going well. And, if you got PTSD or TBI, or you got these disabilities and VA's not cooperating, and on and on and on, and can't find a job, or, I'm getting written up for telling a bad joke or something like that, it just kind of sends you into a spiral,
Yeah.
And that's why what I've built kind of exists. It decompresses everybody as they're coming out, for one thing. And we'll get into the nuts and bolts on it, I know, but it decompresses everybody, and it also gives them a network, a new unit to check into as they get out, is the way I like to put it.
Right.
Because when folks come to the Veterans Farm, what we are doing out here, it is an agricultural training program, and it's meant to keep you from falling into a lot of traps that you might find yourself in. And it's very expository in the sense of agricultural production, but at the same time, it's also a suicide prevention piece by proxy, because we've plugged in the pieces that helps you from going down in a spiral. You've always got an anchor to grab onto and a point of contact to call when stuff is going wrong. So that's kind of the direction that I've gone throughout my life. I never asked to do this, never thought I'd be doing anything like this. And lo and behold, here I am.
So you grew up on a farm, right?
I did. I grew up on a big commercial farm here in North Carolina, just above Raleigh, and we grew tobacco. We raised cattle. We did conventional row crops, stuff like that, and did seed cleaning, as well as in the final days before I went in the Marine Corps, we were running the largest and newest goat herd in the state of North Carolina. My mama, Jane, she kind of saw the writing on the wall with tobacco and all that kind of stuff, and switched over to raising meat goats as a new thing that was coming to North Carolina. And we had truckloads of them coming in from Texas on 1,000 acres. And I built the fence on that 1,000 acres, and it was a pain in the butt. But anyway, I joined the Marine Corps because for a few reasons. One, I can get yelled at all day on a farm and not get paid, or I can go in the Marine Corps and get yelled at and get paid. So it's kind of the easy way in my mind. And, there was among the farm kid community in Eastern North Carolina, I knew quite a few guys that went from the farm to Marine Corps and got to talking to them about it. And just the way that they had transitioned and gone from, podunk North Carolina farm kid to being this absolutely rock solid Marine, and seeing that transformation that they went through. It was sort of like, I want that. And I want a pair of those. I want a set of those dress blues, only to find out when I graduated, they don't issue those. You got to go buy them. So I was kind of miffed about that, but I was happy to get my dress blues. So
yeah, you don't think you're going to have to buy the uniform. You think you're going to be given it, right?
Yeah. No, you got to buy them when I went through. So anyway.
Well, I know in the Army, if you're an officer, you have to buy your uniform, but if you're enlisted, then you get your uniforms.
Sure.
So we were issued our blues, but
good.
they don't look near as good as the Marine blues. That's for darn sure.
No, they don't.
No.
The farm boys, when they would come home on leave, and we were priming tobacco and stuff like that, and they were talking about what's going on in the Marine Corps and what it's like and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of got drawn into that from them. But then when I walked into the recruiter's office, in Raleigh, the recruiting office back in those days, you walk down this hall and there's Air Force, Army, and then on the other side of the hall, there was Navy and Marine Corps. And I'd already kind of had my mind made up, but Air Force door was shut. And yeah, I'm talking trash right now, but the Air Force door was shut and locked. Army guy was sitting in PT gear, and he was kind of fat and eating a cheeseburger. And I was like, that's not really all that appealing. And Navy, whatever they had going on that day, they were wearing Cracker Jacks. And I was just like, no way in hell. I'm not doing that. So Staff Sergeant Harris comes out of the recruiter's office, and, he's tightened up, and he's sort of like, what are you here for? And I was like, I think I'm here to talk to you. And then I got to see the big poster of the Marine and dress blues and stuff. I think he's from 8th and I. But anyway, he's rock solid. And I was like, I want a pair of those. He was like, you got to earn those, bro. So I was like, all right, well, let's get to it. And, it was a surreal experience, becoming a Marine. And yeah, we're the best. We're always going to say we're the best because we're the best. But, anyway.
That's right.
So I loved every minute of my Marine Corps career. I loved all of my guys. I wound up getting out because I wound up having a surgery on one of my knees, and it didn't really work. So I was kind of getting pushed out anyway. So I was lucky enough to snag a contract position when I got out, and rocked and rolled with those same Marines for another 10 years. And it was really really such a out of this world experience. And, I think a lot of vets, I work with a lot of folks that are transitioning from military to civilian, and they haven't had hardly any time in the civilian world. They don't even know what they're in for.
Yeah.
And we wind up losing all of that identity that we've had over the years,
Yes.
You watch them get out here. And I mean, we're not Vet Farm is not an era specific veteran organization like some other ones do that are like post 9/11 and all that, because I involve Vietnam vets. I've got Vietnam vets that are a part of this, that help out, and they come out and they volunteer and they teach. And, one of them is one of the top sheep producers in North Carolina, and he did his military service until I started Vet Farm. I didn't even know, and I've known this guy my entire life, and he was sort of like, I want to talk to you about what you're doing with Vet Farm and how do I be a part of it. And I was like, what's up, man? And he was like, can I help out? And by the way, I was in during NAM, and it's sort of like, you never told me that. And now what's crazy is I bring classes to his farm, and he turns into this back in the day vet with all these guys and gals. And, it's just bringing back the camaraderie and the network and, the sense of purpose that we used to feel.
Right.
It's insane. Just to watch that go down. And when the Afghanistan withdrawal happened, I'm starting to kind of be an up and comer in the veteran community here in North Carolina. My name's getting around pretty well. And I had a lot of Afghanistan guys that were calling me. I pretty much stayed up for 3 days straight because answering calls and trying to take care of those guys that were sitting there watching the withdrawal roll out. And they're like, what for? And finally, I started calling some of these Vietnam guys, and I was like, hey, you guys have been through this. Can I connect you with a couple of other dudes that are really struggling with it right now? And they're like, absolutely. And all of a sudden, it just started to click. So tying in all of these vets, we all share one common thing, and it's we know what it's like to be with people that we had to depend on for our survival, and they depended on us for their survival.
Right.
It's been a beautiful thing to watch start up and grow.
So how did you get started with this 501c3 Veterans Farm?
100% by accident, and not by accident, really. It's providential. But growing up on the farm, I saw my folks struggling massively with finances. And during the 90s and the 80s, we were seeing a very massive shakeup going on in agriculture. And basically it is due to a lot of different things. But if you go back and you kind of examine our country's policy on ag and how we wanted to shape it, it has led to a lot of detriment to farms over the years. And
yes, it has.
I got to watch kind of the rollout of GMO seed, and I got to watch tobacco getting shut down, and just seeing the devastation that was occurring to family farms that were century farms, which means they had been passed down over a century or more through generations. And just watching that happen, I was sort of like, I don't want nothing to do with this. This is insane, because I'm watching my folks go to Farm Credit or FSA, and they're pulling out loans, and it was basically like gambling in my eyes, because it was sort of like, I'm going to go pull a loan to put in a crop that might fail. Most likely something is going to fail at some point or another. It's only a ticking time bomb when farming. And watching these loans and this debt just pile up over the years. And then we're constantly in trouble over where are we going to get the next loan payment to repay it back and stuff like that. I was like, I'm done. Yeah. And that was another major reason why I joined the Marine Corps. and I punched out. And a lot of guys that grew up like me and gals, seeing that kind of stuff, and it still happens to this day, they don't want to return to the farm. They grew up seeing it. They see all the struggle. They were like, there's got to be something better than doing this. So
Yeah.
I didn't want to farm. But when I got back home, I'm trying to go to school and, do the things that our general community does, where I'm going to utilize my GI Bill. I'm going to go to school, and I flunked out of NC State the very first semester.
Oh, no.
And that was after getting an associate's in science and transferring in that I'd been working on, and flunked out miserably. So I was like, well, I guess engineering's not for me, and getting a college degree is not in the cards. And I wound up bouncing from job to job and trying to find work to make stuff work. And I'm back home. I'm living on the farm. The farm's not really being utilized except for being leased out, minus about 60 acres. And I wind up changing oil for a guy I was in high school with, and, just doing general auto maintenance stuff. And one day I put a serpentine belt on a car, and he comes over and he's looking at the serpentine belt, and I had put it on to where you had to turn your head to read the numbers instead of just walking up and looking at it and read the part number on the serpentine belt. And dude starts launching into me, and I was sort of like, whoa, we ain't doing this, because I've been yelled at by far greater men than you'll ever be, bro. And you're not going to sit here and yell at me for $12.50 an hour. And that's a general story of so many veterans that I come across today. It's sort of like they're bouncing from job to job. They're lost.
Yeah.
And I was lost. So I'm going down this wicked spiral, going down this horrible spiral. And, VA is not really cooperating. And back in those days, a lot of VAs have improved. But back in those days, VA was – the wait times were extremely unreasonable for getting seen for anything. Administrations were changing, which meant policies were changing, and trying to figure out how to get help that I needed, and not even realizing how messed up in the head I was at the time. I wound up just sitting in the backyard a lot of the time and kind of staring at the farm, not knowing what to do with myself. And I became suicidal myself, and really started thinking maybe this isn't for me, and I can't go check back into the Marine Corps because I got out because of a knee issue,
Right.
And didn't really know about the Army because the Marine Corps keeps that stuff a secret. We don't talk about those guys, And now I'm down here at Fort Bragg, and I see Marines over here, and they're sort of like, oh yeah, I did Marine Corps, and then I switched over to Army. It's great, but hoorah. I'm like, yeah, I see you. All right, cool. Yeah. Y'all, Army throws away stuff we would fight over. But
That's true. I don't disagree with that.
it is. Army throws away some really good stuff. But that Marines just can't even get. But anyway, so I started going down this spiral and became suicidal myself, extremely depressed. And at the time, my girlfriend at the time had these chickens in the backyard, and she was just crazy about getting some chickens. And I was sort of like, all right, go ahead and get some chickens. We'll take care of the chickens, whatever. But there was one that I was very much attached to, and she was completely attached to me for some reason. And every time I go in the backyard, this chicken would not leave me alone at all. I mean, I call her, and I refer to her out here at Vet Farm now as Adele, the anti-suicide hen. But, she would fly up on my shoulder. There's pictures of that on some of my Facebook stuff. And, she was always pecking at my sandwiches when I'd go in the backyard eating lunch and stuff. And it was sort of like one day, that was one of the only things that was kind of really bringing me joy, was getting to see that stinking chicken every day. And it dawned on me, it's like, hey, dummy, why don't you start farming again? Why don't you do it on your own terms? You're blessed enough to have some land, so why don't you get out there and try to give it a go? And I started out raising some broilers and, raising pasture raised chicken, and I got into hogs really quick, and I was learning about anything I could with business at the time, because that's where I felt like my folks had kind of fallen short. They weren't very keen on business principles, but they were extremely good farmers, and they could grow the hell out of anything any day of the freaking week. But at the end of the day, managing money, it was like they'd get a check in for whatever they'd grown, and it's going right into the pocket where you got to go buy a new truck and all this. And it's like, y'all are spending money you don't need to spend money on. What are you doing?
Yeah.
So basically, I got into really looking at business and looking at farming from a business standpoint instead of what most veterans consider it to be, where they get drawn into this idea of, I'm going to start a farm and it's going to be wonderful, and it's all sunshine and rainbows and we're out there chasing butterflies, and it's not that. It's really hard work. It's really hard stuff to pull off. So that's kind of why we exist. But I really applied those business principles to what I was doing, and I figured out real quick that pork made money. And I started focusing the business specifically on pork and working at it and slugging it out in farmers markets and stuff, and really trying to get behind the business and marketing end and sending out sales sheets and I'm getting your email. If you're buying something from me, I'm getting that email. And all of a sudden I started doing delivery. I had a couple of customers that were asking me, would you ever consider delivering? And I was like, yeah, sure. I can bring some stuff by and drop it off. So I created this thing where it was, if you buy $75, and for those of y'all listening that are interested in ag and starting a farm, here's a little sweet tidbit. I started this thing where I'd deliver. If you made an order of $75, I would deliver to your house on Friday. And all of a sudden the orders started coming in, and the sales sheets are getting passed around, and I'm starting to make more money delivering than I ever did at farmers markets. And the thing that I wasn't really anticipating was that sales sheet getting passed around to corporate office buildings in Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. Because 75 minimum order, they're passing it around. They're like, I'll buy a pack of brats. You want something? Yeah. And I remember when I got the order the first time from one of these office buildings, big office building, and they were ag commodity brokers is what it was actually. But it was an order for something like $3,000 in product. And,
oh, wow.
And I'm making probably 600 at a farmer's market max gross. And when I saw that, I was sort of like, that is the direction I need to start pushing marketing to. So I started adding in brokering beef and stuff like that, and creating these new ways to bring more animals onto the farm and ramping up production and all that kind of stuff. And stuff was really starting to take off really well. And during that time, some folks knew my story in ag already. I'd gotten a grant from Raffy in Pittsburgh a year before to buy some chicken processing equipment, but they were holding a meeting with all of the leaders in ag in North Carolina. So like Farm Bureau's there, Farm Credit's there, Farm Service Agency, which is USDA, is there. VA is there, Farmer Veteran Coalition is there, and is this big round table, and they wanted me to come in and tell my story. And it was the first time I ever publicly spoke. So I gave them kind of the aircraft crash thing. That's where I developed that, trying to relay how that works and what it's like for me, and then telling my story. And they all wanted a copy of my talk. So I gave it to them, and within about a week, all of these news agencies started reaching out to me. Here's this crazy jarhead on a farm making it work, and, farming saved his life. And of all things, it was farming, and gave him purpose. And they started writing stories. I'm getting pushed out all over the place. I'm getting dragged across the country to go speak and talk about my experience and how to help other veterans get into what we're doing. And that was kind of the birth of Veterans Farm. I started getting phone calls and emails from veterans that were like, I read about you. It is exactly what I think I'm looking for, what you've got. How can I learn from you? And it was sort of like, come on over to the farm. You can crash on the couch. We'll get up in the morning. We'll go take care of the pigs. We'll go pack orders. We'll go cut chickens, whatever we got to do. I'll show you what I know, and we'll go from there. So
Wow.
that's kind of how everything kicked off.
So in what year was that? Did you start the farm?
Well, I mean, I was just farming for myself at the time.
Yeah.
And that was probably around 2012, 2013, somewhere in there. Actually, it was more like 2014 is when all of that started kicking off really well. And I wound up getting nominated for an award for Small Farmer of the Year in North Carolina. And it was kind of I wasn't expecting it. I wound up getting to speak in front of everybody, the who's in agriculture, because this is a big breakfast with the Commissioner of Agriculture in North Carolina. So all the land grant universities are there and the deans and all that kind of stuff. And they gave me 3 minutes to speak. And the only thing that I was trying to do there was tell these folks, hey, look, y'all are missing a talent pool to bring into your industries. You guys need to be looking at the military and starting to recruit to military and bring them into agriculture. And when I got off the stage, I'm coming down the stage after getting the award, and NC State was standing there waiting for me when I got off the stage. And they were like, we would like for you to talk to us about getting more military veterans into the College of Ag and Life Sciences and the Agricultural Institute at NC State. And I was like, sure, I'll have that conversation. And it led to them really pushing to hire me on part-time as a agricultural liaison, a military liaison. So I go and I'm hanging out at Fort Bragg and getting to know what the Fort Bragg scene is because they're so close to Raleigh. Same thing with, Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, and trying to crack the doors open over there and figure out how do I get to more of these transition and service members and let them know y'all can go to College of Ag and have y'all considered agriculture, and do you want to utilize your GI Bill benefits for that? And the transition officer, CSP officer at Fort Bragg, he pulled me to the side one day and he was like, hey, look, I've got a lot of transitioning soldiers that are asking for an agricultural training program, a basic one. Do you think you could build one and put it on Fort Bragg? And I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? So at the same time, I'm still farming too. Wow. I'm running deliveries. But anyway, we go out and we get some funding together to start it up. And it was called the Soldier to Agriculture Program. The very first ag training program on a military installation ever.
Wow.
And I built it and put the curriculum together because it's based off of all these folks that I've been working with coming to the farm and taking the lessons that they didn't know, that farm kids learn pretty much autonomously growing up, but adding the business side to it and showing what the opportunities are and whether or not you can actually make it or break it, and tying in resources and all that kind of stuff. So we threw up a greenhouse on Fort Bragg. We're doing hydroponics in the classroom. We're talking about plant science, soil science, and all that kind of stuff. I got people from NC State coming down and talking to the classes. And it turned out to be one of the most highly sought after programs for career skills programs in the Army at Fort Bragg. And every class we had was slam full, just about. And during that time, the overall idea was to start it up, get it running, and then hand it off to somebody else. And I'm going to go back to farming and doing liaison. My mama at the time, she died and a family member wound up selling off the entire farm. So right after we had posted the job announcement, all that went down in about 2 weeks. And I basically got the eviction notice from the family farm I grew up on. And I called up my boss one day and I said, "Hey, look, you mind if I apply for that position that we created to replace me?" She was like, "Absolutely, go ahead," and told her what was going on. She knew. And I wound up getting the job, thankfully, and ran the Soldier to Ag program for 5 more years, all the way through COVID. Wow. And when the administration changed at NC State, they wanted to hand off the program to a land grant university mission that's known as Cooperative Extension Service. And they're kind of your local county office for agricultural stuff between land grant universities. They're a resource in the local communities. They wanted to hand off the program from academia over to extension. And I had just bought this land out here where the Veterans Farm is now. And Soldier to Ag was great because it allowed me to kind of give them just enough to know whether or not they wanted to get into it, and just enough to not completely lose your tail in farming, but it wasn't enough for me to really show the breadth of agriculture and what all is truly possible and what it really does take. And, how do you work with cows? Because we couldn't put cows on Fort Bragg as much as I tried. And a lot of vets, they get out and they want to go straight into beef cattle because that's kind of like the status symbol. And look at me, I'm a cowboy now, and it's an adrenaline rush too, because a lot of the guys getting out that have been in combat and really felt the adrenaline pump through their bodies, they like to go into cowboying because it's kind of giving them that same rush again. Right. But the problem is that starting up a beef cattle herd is extremely difficult. It takes years. You're not going to see a return on investment for a long time. So I really wanted to build something that was way more dynamic. And in the years that I had been traveling around and meeting other vets that were doing other programs across the U.S., I was like, there's a program that does apprenticeships and ties them into other farms. There's a program that does basil production. There's a program that does organic gardening. They're all very specialized programs. They don't cover the full breadth of what agriculture is. Right. So I wanted to build something that was just insanity. And, we're going to start a training farm that shows you all the entry-level models of agricultural production. And we're going to be able to show you through this work the money that it takes to do it. So we track, what the costs are for running a beef cattle herd, looking at returns on investment. What is gross versus net? What are basic business principles? What's a P&L? What's a balance sheet? Why are they used? How do you build a business plan? Look at how I can actually get into agriculture and grow it to where I want to be, the beef cattle herd, but I need to focus on something that's going to make money to start with. And that's kind of what we built. So I bought this land in order for us to build that. And I did it with a VA loan to prove that that model works, because a lot of folks have barriers to getting land through conventional means. But if you get with the right VA lender, they can help you do a construction loan on a parcel of land in order for you to have your own farm. So I wanted to prove that concept. So I did it myself and utilized my VA loan to do it. And, we started out from scratch, because 53 acres, complete pine cutover with a mountain of trash in the middle of it. And people had been using it for dump site. And it was absolutely nothing when we started. And I closed on this property in December of 2020. And in just the last 5-ish, 6-ish years, one piece by piece with the students, building the classroom, building the greenhouses, building the shop, building fences, putting in pastures, doing the soil samples. We do it all, and we build it in small stages so each class gets to see pieces of this as it goes along. And we started switcherooing up on the curriculum and all that kind of stuff and making it much more in depth, bringing in much heavier hitting experts on stuff, people that have been out in the industry doing the thing and they've made it, and looking at successful operations over the years and how do we actually make this work. And anyway, we were trying to take care of the Fort Bragg crew because a lot of transitioners are still interested in what we have to offer in training out here. Proud to say that Soldier to Ag, the program that I built before, is still running today, and their classroom is full. Our classroom is full. So, we're doing really good work, and we collaborate a lot now between those two programs. But they're a lot more resource focused and kind of just giving you the 30,000 foot view. But when you get out here, students start out, if you're transitioning out of the military, you can do 2 months, a 2-month course with us, and it is high speed, low drag. Or you can do the 5-month intensive course with us. And both courses get the same generalized curriculum. But the 5-month classes, they wind up getting an individualized project time where they're able to come to the farm. They have to feed everything in the morning. They have to take care of the garden. We have grass cutting days in the summer where we all jump in and we're cutting the grass and taking care of everything. Yeah. They have to take care of everything on the farm. And we start out on day one with farm safety. Then day two, it's how to feed and what to feed and how do you figure out how much to feed and all that kind of good stuff, and then we start rolling through it as we go. And, what are the things that we're looking for as staff out here? How do we know if an animal is hurt or is experiencing some kind of issue that we need to take care of? And anyway, they go through the curriculum. We get a bunch of tours. We do a bunch of labs. And then the transitioning folks on the 2-month program will graduate. But the 5-month program, they go into their individualized project time. And that's 2 months basically where they have been exposed to everything out here from hydroponic lettuce to hydroponic basil to fruit tree production, vineyards, honeybees, doing any of the animals out here, organic vegetables, planting seeds, doing field crop stuff. We've got folks where we'll have a day of going out and putting them on the tractor to cut hay if it's that time of year and stuff like that. Tractor safety, different tractor types, the whole 9 yards. They get exposed to all this stuff, and they don't have to spend money in order to figure out whether or not their idea, not knowing things that they don't know, if their idea is going to be something that they're even interested in. Because a lot of times somebody that goes into farming with zero knowledge prior and no course or no mentor or anything like that, they've read an article, they've looked into stuff on YouTube University, and they think this is the direction I want to go. Yeah. They get into it, they start doing it, they've exhausted a bunch of money, and then all of a sudden they figure out real quick, I hate this. I don't want to do that.
It's not for me. Right.
Yeah. It's not working out the way I thought it was going to work. So Vet Farm actually circumvents that. And so when they get into their project phase, they're able to choose a direction that they actually want to go based off of real life work and analyzing what the difference is in between the various production models and business related stuff. So they choose a direction, and then we create their own project. And that may be working on another farm that's very specialized in something like that. We've got a wide network in North Carolina of over 1,000 farmer veterans that we've put together over the years. And we network them together. We try to get them working with each other. They may be doing an incubator project here on the farm or whatever. I'm really excited because I finally found a butcher shop that's going to work with us to let our class go out there and learn butchering for an entire week. Wow. Stuff like that, learn how to cut meat and how to break a cow down and how to break a hog down and stuff like that. So we finished that program with development of a business plan because at some point or another, they're going to need to have it. And we walk them through what a business plan looks like and how to prepare for it. and all that kind of good stuff. But the other part to the entire reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is because through the suicides that I've personally witnessed and was completely helpless to do anything about, and my guys that have committed suicide, and then other veterans that I know that have committed suicide, I've noticed a pattern. And, some of the who's in the veteran space in North Carolina, we were kind of talking about it one day, and they all noticed the same patterns as well, where if you see a veteran, and I'm actually writing this right now and I'm about to publish it in the next 6 months. But if a veteran is going through financial troubles or legal problems, or if they are going through mental or physical health problems, or they're having a spousal issue, one or a combination or all three of those things tend to be a severe trigger that leads to the suicide event.
Yeah.
So throughout building Vet Farm, what I've been doing is adding in parts to the curriculum that satisfy those things. And what I mean by that is, like today, the class actually started with mental health coping mechanisms and personality traits and talking to your spouse, because farming is a family sport.
Yes, it is.
We have an LMFT that's very good. She comes out here. We've got actually a few LMFTs that we work with, and she was out here working on them today and going through all that stuff. But now we actually have services to where if a veteran is involved with our network or our program, that we know of, is facing a really difficult time or is in need of triage or something like that, we have an LMFT that'll pick up the phone and kind of work with them while they're waiting to get their mental health care that they need from the VA or from whatever their preferred mental health care is, because there's a long wait time for mental health in the VA, as you know.
Right.
So we've got that satisfies our mental and physical health kind of thing. Everything out here is disability friendly because we're all beat up and banged up that work out here. We've got American Legion does a phenomenal job of doing veterans benefits. So they come out and they spend the entire day going through their records and getting them applied for whatever benefits they may be lacking and giving them the real deal about what benefits mean and, what to do, what not to do, that kind of stuff. Not from like a sneaky level, but just, here's how you need to be able to do this in order to achieve the benefits that you've earned.
Right.
We've got associative services with like the Veterans Treatment Court here in our own county. So if somebody's facing legal issues, we've got a team of lawyers that can help them. And then with the spousal stuff, that's where our LMFT comes in, because I like for them to be able to work with somebody that presents it like, hey, listen, from day one, when we get in the military, we are taught battle buddy, battle buddy, battle buddy. Well, psychologically speaking, what does that really relate to with us? And this goes into the transitional suicide part, where you have been taught codependency at a severe level, essentially, is what you have been taught. And you break out of the military, you no longer have that codependency that you've been dependent on for survival. So we need to kind of deprogram y'all a little bit and just give you some coping skills and some coping mechanisms. So we added that in. And then around that is the purpose of the Veterans Farm, and giving veterans purpose in agriculture and giving them a reason to live, a new mission, which is part of our tagline. Being able to, veterans are the only ones that are going to be able to take over farms for tomorrow. And the general American public doesn't even realize this, but only 1% of the American population is now a U.S. farmer. And the average age of those farmers is 58 years old.
Yeah.
And, we are losing farms left and right. We see development happening all over the country. And, it's also largely due to USDA policy over the years, over the last 100 years. So we're looking at a very fragile system within agriculture. We're efficient. We're very efficient at producing stuff. But at the end of the day, look at COVID, when COVID happened, and we wound up having store shelves going bare because just a simple burp in the supply system. And, you know, another event like that, it wouldn't take much to make it even worse than what it was during COVID. So we've got to start having a bridge between demographics in this country that can take over farms and veterans being mission oriented as we are, you know, and extremely driven. If we feel like we have a purpose, those are the ones that can actually get in and start making some waves. And we see that across the country. We tie them into a network of other, like I say, out here on the farm is a bunch of crazy knuckleheads. We tie them in with a bunch of other guys and gals that are out there doing the thing. And it turned into a peer support network where we have peer support network specialists that check on our former students and folks in the network and make sure they're doing okay. And if they need a resource, they can go ahead and get them in the direction of the resource that's needed. And then after that, you know, it's talking about spirituality and stuff like that. Are you at peace? Or where are we going? How are we feeling about our life today and stuff like that? And, you know, what direction can we help you get in to kind of find peace and whatever you're going to need, you know, because I say this all the time to people and they never really understand the full depth of this simple sentence. But the philosophy that I have is out here in the veteran community, we're all we got. And, you know, it's you really think about those 4 words. Yeah, it makes sense immediately when I say it. But at the end of the day, I keep telling all of my former students, we're all we got. And we need to take care of each other. And if we're not going to do that, then there's no point in moving on in this world. And as a result of all of the stuff that we've been doing and the suicide model that I'm about to roll out, the suicide prevention model I'm about to roll out, and everything that we're doing, like I said, I never thought I'd be doing anything like this. Never dreamed I'd go back to farming or wind up an executive director of a nonprofit I started. That's now I can honestly say that we have had 12 people in the last 5 years that have come forward and told us and staff directly to our faces that if it were not for this program, I would not be here right now. And these students, these former students, you know, I tell them all the time, I need y'all just as much as y'all need me, you know, because it's crazy to watch each class, especially the 5-month class. They turn into this entire unit where I've got like 12 different group chats of former student classes and, you know, and then there's the overall alumni chat, and they are constantly in there talking. They're constantly coming back to the farm. They'll crash a class day in a heartbeat without telling me they're coming out and just sit in class and come see what's new and what's going on out here. And they start working with each other and talking to each other. And, you know, the truth of the matter is farmers are now in a ridiculous amount of suicide issues themselves because of the pressures that are going on in society and in the markets and so forth. And, you know, any little blip in the system, you guaranteeing farms are going to be dying. And farmers are now completely isolated. So back when I was growing up, farmers used to throw parties every summer. And there was always moonshine at the back of the truck. There's a banjo over there playing. And there's a country band or something. There's cows and chickens running around. Kids are having a good time. You know, back in those days in the 80s and the 90s, farmers still were very much network driven and tied together and helping each other out. You don't see that anymore because now it's massive farms that are in an area and it's a family that's farming the entire thing. So all of the other farmers are now driven out of an area and they're gone. So the suicide model that I'm working on is, and going to be publishing is kind of catching ground with some land grant universities because it's such an intensive and dynamic model that nobody's ever thought of before. But it also works for farmers, where you've just got to get the farmers together and get them to start hashing shit out on paper and, talking about their stuff and dealing with their stuff and building a network. They've got the purpose. They just need the network and they need the other base things satisfied and helped out. So I'm really excited to see where we're going from here, and, really excited to see how things are going to shape up over the years as we grow.
Well, your approach is very holistic, and it encompasses all the facets of mental health and rehabilitation and about purpose and process. And so I think really what you're doing is amazing. And we were talking earlier before the show that AJ Richards is someone that's putting producers and growers together. And he was looking for people in the Midwest and the East Coast to partner in his network. And so it's just another veteran opportunity to engage and to support one another. So definitely looking forward to, promoting you two together and seeing what comes of that, because I think big things can come for sure.
Likewise.
So I was really interested to see that you've got a class going right now, and then you've got one starting in March, right, for the next phase. So you've got one that's called Veterans Agricultural Training and Education Program, and then you've got the Military Agricultural Program internship. Yep. And that's the one that's for active duty. So when a student is coming, are they staying there? Do they have to live local? What does that look like?
The majority of them are local. Some of our students have utilized Fort Bragg housing, because Fort Bragg is literally right there, and there's a C-17 going over my head at the moment. But yeah, some of them are able to get in down there at Fort Bragg and get transitional housing while they're down here. We've been working to try to get tiny homes out here for folks to stay. And, we don't just take care of students, we take care of the entire veteran community and ag community as a whole. Vets go through stuff. They go through divorces. They go through all kinds of stuff. Sometimes they just need a place to crash for a little while and get themselves recentered and back on their feet. And that's what we're trying to do, but also have some student housing out here. But, what's really been interesting to me is I'll have students or potential students that'll show up for an open house out here and get to see what they're going to learn and talk to us and all that kind of stuff. And I have students that drive all the way from Charlotte out here, which is, every bit of about a 2.5 hour drive. I've had folks from Camp Lejeune that are equally as distant, and they're coming out 4 days a week during class days and doing it. And, they keep coming. So, we try to hook them up. We've got a few folks that are farmer students that have campers on their farms. They'll rent out for a little while, real cheap, to students that are coming out. One of my former students has an Airbnb now, and, she'll take folks for the class. And it's the community that we've got and what North Carolina has built as a whole, and all of the agricultural veteran programs that we have. And the network alone is second to any other state. There's nothing like what we built in North Carolina. And, for the future, I'm looking at taking this thing and kind of expanding it further and turning it back into this community of knuckleheads where we're working together. We're trying to help each other out. And, if you're involved in eating 3 times a day, then you're involved in agriculture. So you're part of us. We'll find a place for you somewhere in there.
Well, that's awesome. We've only got like a minute left. Is there any final thoughts you'd like to put out before we leave today?
Yes. Of course, it's the shameless plug. If you would, please go to vfnc.org, click that donate button, and, do a $3 or $5 a month recurring donation if you like what you heard from what I'm telling you. And we really do appreciate the support, because we have been grant funded for the last 5 years, and grants are kind of a shaky space right now. So we're soon taking in GI Bill, and we're already taking in Voc Rehab and Skill Bridge and all that kind of stuff. So please support our mission and give us a hand helping others.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I learned so much, and I really love what you're doing because I really think you're making a difference. I mean, it's obvious you're making a difference, and I think it's a really good way for veterans to get re-engaged back into the community, being farmers, producers, growers, and really supporting their own communities and supporting each other. So I really appreciate what you've brought to us tonight, and I just want to thank you for being on the podcast.
No, thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Well, we'll look forward to getting you hooked up with AJ. And this is Tracer Round signing off.
Thanks.
Life is like a duck. Tough times don't last, but tough people do. Here at Military Broadcast Radio, we're teaming up with our friends at Die Tired, the veteran-friendly music band spreading strength, resilience, and mental health awareness one shirt at a time.
And check this out. Their brand new shirts feature broadcast beaker right on the breast pocket. A reminder that you can weather the storm and you're never alone.
Shirts are only $25 and proceeds support giving veterans a voice. MBR's mission to teach veterans how to podcast and videocast. Because when our vets are talking, they're not overthinking. They're not second-guessing. Together, we stop the 22 stigma. Grab your shirt today at mbradio.us and hit the shop. Or go directly to toramerch.printavo.com/merch/dietiredband. That's toramerch.printavo.com/merch/dietiredband.
Suit up, stand strong.
Remember, we're unduckable together.
You're built tougher than the storm.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.